Welcome to Your Hometown Solutions. I'm your host, Jean Newell, and we'll be discussing everything real estate from foreclosures to Feng Shui. And in the studios with me today is Jonathan Lack, a real estate attorney, broker, and owner of Waterview Title. And also in the studios with me is our favorite senior mortgage consultant, Carolyn Wolf. And she's with Certified Mortgage Planners. Welcome, Jonathan and Carolyn.
Thank you, Jean.
Glad to be here.
Well, we have a lot to discuss today on our half-hour show. We like to inform our audiences because there's so many things out there now with real estate that it's important information, and a lot of people are still using old information that they might have known from years ago, or they're not aware of what's going on. So, Carolyn, and Jonathan, let's talk a little bit about some of the questions that people might be asking over time. In fact, I have 199 questions that buyers and sellers should be asking their real estate agents, hopefully not all at one time, right, Jonathan?
Right.
And some of the questions we're going to be talking about are, number one, how does owning compare to renting? That's one of the things we'll be discussing. How do I know how much I should budget for my mortgage payment? That's number two. And the third question is, should I purchase if I know I'm leaving the area soon? So that's some of the things that really affect us here on the Space Coast. And of course, if you're living in another part of the nation, we try to make our show generic enough that you will gain information no matter where you're living. But we are recording and our live shows here in the studios on the Space Coast. So, Jonathan Lack, let's talk a little bit about your companies because it's so important to know the differences between real estate companies, brokers, real estate associates. Let's start first with your law office. You have Lack and Lack Chartered, and you're attorneys at law, and that you specialize in real estate law. What are some of the reasons that you can think of just off the top of your head right now on why people might want to get in touch with a real estate attorney versus a real estate agent in the very beginning of their real estate search?
All right. Well, thank you for having me on the show, Jean, and it's always a pleasure to be working with you. Lack Chartered is a transactional real estate law firm. It's my father and myself in practice together, and we specialize in representing buyers and sellers in connection with transactions, real estate transactions, both commercial and residential. I am also the broker owner of Waterview Realty Services, and that's consists of real estate agents who help buyers and sellers to find properties and to sell properties, put buyers and sellers together. And lastly, I have Waterview Title Services, which is the hub of any closing transaction. The title company is the organization that closes the loan. It brings the buyers and sellers and lenders together, prepares the paperwork, and handles the closing. You would want a real estate attorney to review your contracts and to make sure that your rights and obligations are being protected and you're doing what you're supposed to. When buying a property or when selling it is typically the biggest transaction you're going to make, and you want to make sure that everything goes smoothly.
One of the things, we're both from South Florida, and we moved up here, Jonathan and I, several years apart, but we're both from South Florida, and I've been up here since 1980 on the Space Coast, and you've been here since, when was it?
2003.
2003. And so we really understand the market and what's going on, but one of the things that I remember when I first came here in the early 1980s is people would come to me, and I worked in a development called Suntree, which is kind of a mini version of a city, really, because it had everything there, houses and townhouses and so forth. But they would come to me and they'd say, do we need a lawyer to look at our contract? And we were always programmed to say, no, you don't need a lawyer because we have a title company, there's title searches and you close with a title company in Florida as opposed to other states. But I'm retracting that now from my language because there's many people that, especially if they're coming from New York, New Jersey, some of those areas, that they're used to using a lawyer to write up the contracts or at least review them. And the lawyer really plays an important part of the transaction as opposed to now in Florida, a lot of real estate agents are using the standard FAR bar contract, and that's was designed and that was created by lawyers. So it's not just something real estate agents came up with. This is a contract that the attorneys came up with. But the point is, if you're comfortable and you're used to having an attorney, why not? If it gives you peace of mind and you're used to that already, have an attorney take a look at your contract, whether you're the seller or you're the buyer, even though you have representation from a real estate agent. So there's still those people that feel more comfortable using an attorney.
Well, Jean, you said something right then, which is exactly the point, and it's representation. An attorney is going to be an advocate for their client. An attorney is only going to represent one party, the buyer or the seller. Now, as a transactional attorney, my goal is to make the transaction goes. If my buyer wants to buy the property, then I'm going to do everything I can to assist him with the purchase. If my seller wants to sell the property, I'm going to do everything I can to assist him with the sale. It is not my job to interfere or cause trouble or make the transaction more difficult. Quite the contrary, my goal is to make the transaction go smoothly. However, I will be representing the interest of the buyer or the seller. So in some cases, I may get a buyer who has certain particulars that they need. Now, a real estate agent, and again, I am a broker as well, so I wear that real estate agent hat. And as a real estate agents essentially represent the transaction, or they represent the seller. Their goal is to get the property sold. So buyers who are buying property, while there are provisions for real estate agents to act as buyer agents, that is the uncommon, that is more rare. Typically, a real estate agent is representing either the transaction or the seller. So when you're buying a property, which is typically the biggest purchase you're going to make to date, you want somebody representing your interest and making sure that your needs are covered and that you're protected. And that's the primary difference with a real estate attorney and a real estate agent as far as advocacy and representation. Obviously, some of the other differences are, as attorneys, we can draft contracts and we can prepare documents and we can do things to protect the parties and make sure the transaction goes smoothly. But again, real estate agents serve their very valuable purpose of finding a perfect home for a buyer and helping find a buyer for a seller. And real estate agents assist with things like inspections and surveys and finding somebody perfect like Carolyn to get a mortgage for you. So each of the different players in the real estate transaction plays a different role. Well,
I want to bring Carolyn in on this conversation, but on contracts, I can remember when I got here in 1980, the contracts were legal size paper and was two sheets of legal size paper. Now they're upwards to 12, 16 pages. A tiny little print, two sides, it's very complicated, and there's other addendums that have to be added. And there's so many places in a contract that it's a fill in the blank. But if you don't fill it in properly, it makes everybody, especially Carolyn, because she's going to be one of the first people to receive that contract. You want to have all those documents and all those dates filled in properly, which I want to do a little plug for you, Jonathan Lack from Lack & Lack Chartered, as well as Waterview Realty. You actually teach the 3,500 licensed real estate agents in this area how to fill out a contract. It's that complicated. It's not just a template base. It's now up to a 3-hour course. Isn't that correct?
It's actually now 4 hours.
4 hours. So we have 4 hours to fill out a document that is a fill in the space, because again, there's just so many things that people don't understand. It's a very important document that if you don't get it right, there's too many opportunities when you're technically what we used to call out of contract, which means that you really don't have an official contract anymore because someone didn't do something on a specific date that they were supposed to do, because there was nobody really guiding someone through the process. It has gotten to the point that it's so complicated now. There's really administrative assistance to help the real estate agents. That's one of the things that we have at Waterview Realty, is that you have people there helping move things along on a timely basis. If there's ever a question, we are able to walk in, knock on Jonathan's door and say, Jonathan, what do you think about this particular clause, or how do we address that? It's so nice to have law right there. We got the law. And the law won. Now, considering what we were just talking about on contracts, Carolyn Wolf, with certified mortgage planners. Before we go any further, you have a special number. We want to make sure we're legal with the government. You have to hand out or specifically state your NMLS number, not MLS like multiple listing service. This is NMLS, which stands for what, Carolyn?
It stands for National Mortgage Licensing System.
All right. So she can't speak without saying that license. Give us your license number.
Thank you, Jean. Yeah, we just want to be compliant. My name's Carolyn Wolf, and I'm with Certified Mortgage Planners, and my license number, NMLS number, is 268538, and our office number is 1420061.
There we go. They can also reach you by a website or email.
Absolutely. We have a website. It's www.floridalendingpro.com, and our phone number is 321-795-9103.
Oh, that's great. And before we forget, why don't Jonathan, give out your best contact information, and they can, whatever they need you for, whether it's lawyer, title company, or a broker.
Thank you. The best way to reach me is typically through the law office, Lack & Lack Chartered, and the phone number there is area code 321-953-5115. We're also on the web at www.lacklaw.com. That's LACKLAW.com. And I can be reached by email at johnlack@lacklaw.com, which is spelled JONLACK at LACKLAW.com.
We have to come up with, we're working on a slogan for you. Like, if you lack knowledge in real estate, call Jonathan, because it's Jonathan Lack. So it's a little play on words. So LACK right here. We're going to come up with some great slogan. But bottom line, we have so many things to talk about, and there could be hours of air time on talking. But we want to every week come up with a couple things that we really get into, so it might help you if you're out there thinking about buying or selling, as far as what you need to do. And by the way, I'll put in a little plug for our website at yourhometownsolutions.com. There you can get some great ideas on whether you should buy or whether you should sell, because sometimes, depending on your age, I like to work with boomers and seniors. You're thinking about buying or selling, but you just don't know what you want to do. And so sometimes it's nice just to sit down with someone or even on the phone and talk through what your future looks like as far as what you have in mind, because sometimes you're better off staying put and just remodeling, and other times you have a lot of options. And in weeks to come, Carolyn's going to be explaining some of the ways, especially if you're over 62, how you can do a lot of things with the equity you already have in your home, or for new homes that you're purchasing that you may not be able to qualify for a specific loan under the regular guidelines. So that being said, we talked about the 3 questions we were going to talk about. How does owning compare with renting? How do I know how much I can budget for a mortgage payment? And should I purchase if I know I'm legal? Let's touch a little bit on that. We have a couple samples we were working on the other night, Carolyn and I. Let's talk about give an example of a home, if it was to, how much it's worth, if you were going to sell it, and then if you were going to rent it, and the variations on that theme.
Thank you, Jean. Yes, I think we also were touching base on some people out there who are trying to decide whether to rent versus buy scenario, because in today's market, as you were explaining to me and coming to me, it's gotten awful hard for people to find homes to rent.
It's unbelievable. I don't know what happened in the last 6 months, but rents have jumped sky high. And I think it's telling us what the real estate market is doing as a whole. Is there for a while, about 2 years ago, we were seeing a lot of people flipping houses, and all of a sudden all these flipping companies come out of the woodwork and they're advertising on TV, get in there, and you're going, oh, the market must be picking up. They're really selling all these how to flip a home and all. But all these investors have purchased at a good time. I think for some reason, here we are with interest rates very low, and yet the rentals are sky high now. Exactly. I was looking for something for a friend of mine the other day, and what was renting for $850 just about 9 months ago is now $1,250. I'm going, what happened?
Right.
Did we run out of rentals? So go ahead and explain the rental versus a buying scenario that we kind of did a little example.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jean. Yeah, one of the things too is a lot of consumers out there don't realize that they could actually buy. They've always thought themselves as renters, and now they're in this pickle because rents are so high. But we did a great example in our area. If somebody's looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, roughly about 1,400 square feet, purchase price on average maybe about $140,000. If they were to rent that, it's probably going to be anywhere from $1,200 to $1,600, depending on the area. Now, if they did a mortgage with a minimal down payment of only 3.5% down, because that's the other thing. A lot of people think they need 20% down, but it's not the case. Sometimes they might even get away with just as little as 3%, or if they're veterans, nothing.
Right.
And if we ran a scenario where you put down a minimal amount with the taxes and insurance and home mortgage insurance that is required, just over $1,000 a month on a mortgage.
So you're not only saving $200 or $300, maybe $400 in rent.
Right.
We don't have time to get into the big tax advantages, but technically there's some tax advantages there at the end of the year that in reality your mortgage didn't cost you as much as you thought because you're going to be able to write off a lot of the interest and so forth. So there's a big difference when you take that into consideration as well. And of course, there's a lot of advantages. One of the things we are finding with rentals, now that rentals are hard to find, all the specifications and the requirements have gotten strict. Nobody wants to have animals. They're limiting how many people will rent it. They only want so many people renting. And, they don't want families of 6 renting a 3-bedroom. They want only 3 people renting. They want that. When you own, you can nail up pictures. You can do whatever you want. You can bring your animals, fence in the backyard. It's so much easier. But let's give us a little bit of scenario on that second. We're kind of wrapping into our second question. How do I know how much I should budget for a mortgage payment? So that kind of goes into qualifying. Of course, the first thing we always tell people to do before we even get interested in looking at property is to give you a call, because over the phone, in most cases, you can find out very quickly exactly where they need to be, not only to qualify, but maybe their comfort level. Maybe they can qualify to make a $1,500 or $2,000 mortgage payment a month, but that's not what they want.
Correct.
So you need to know those things. So some of the tips on how to get ready. One of the things we talked about is a lot of people kind of shoot themselves in the foot before they go for a mortgage because they haven't set themselves up right to purchase a home. Some of those tips, let's go into some of those tips we talked about. Maybe you have them on your do's and don'ts, or some of the tips that one of them that comes to mind is when you're talking about seasoned money. I like that, seasoned money.
Yes. Okay. One of the main things if anybody's just even thinking about it, sometimes they don't want to call us if they're thinking it's 6 months or 12 months down the road that they'll hold off. But that is absolutely one of the best times you can call a lender. We can go over some numbers for you just to make sure that you are prepared, because sometimes things can take up to 6 months' time to get you prepared for doing the home purchase. But a couple of tips as far as our down payment and funds to close. We want to make sure we're saving up in our savings account and it has seasoned in your account for 2 solid months of bank statements. So that could be a little over 60 days because they are actual bank statements.
So let's make sure people understand that. I've got cash and I've got $10,000. Maybe it was given to me and I've got it under my mattress right now because I haven't decided where I'm going to put it. If all of a sudden I'm out there looking at property and I say I want to take this $10,000 and put it on a down payment, I still have to show where I came up with that $10,000. So it needs to be put in a savings account or a checking account, something trackable for at least 2 months so I can use it as cash. That's kind of bizarre when we think in terms of we can't use cash for buying things, but it was basically, I think, years ago when there was so much drug trafficking and so forth, they're trying to find out, hey, how are you coming up with this cash?
Right.
So we're kind of paying for that industry as well. That's one of the new security things. Yeah. But you want to make sure you know what's going to be expected of you. So you see a house you like and you've told that real estate agent, I'm going to be putting $20,000 down. You meet with you. All of a sudden, you can't do anything for 2 months because it's not seasoned. So that's what we mean by seasoned money.
Right. As long as if we can show the ability, say they sold something like a boat or something, and we can prove that they owned it and the person gave them cash and they held it, But that is definitely a good tip as far as some people feel, whether they're getting paid in tips or a lot of their employment is paid on cash and they keep it. They think it's okay, which it is. It's fine. But when you come to buying a home, if we can't trail it or provide a good trail and proof, then we can't use it. But if they are consistently putting it into the bank and letting it season into their bank account, we can use it.
What are a couple other tips that people should be aware of right now if they're say 90 days out from purchasing as a minimum? Some of the things they should be you talked about seasoned money. Maybe they need to season themselves a little bit. They need to be doing some things that make themselves more mortgage. What would be the
friendly,
word?
Lendable,
Yeah, there you go.
Better interest rates. A lot of stuff does derive from credit. So there's a couple of good credit tips as far as not opening up new installments. So car loans or any kind of long-term, short-term installment type loans. Those can bring down your credit score as well as maybe throw your debt to income ratio a little bit out of whack. If you're thinking of getting a new car, that payment could hinder our process.
That's right. Speaking about car loans, if you have a car loan right now, there's a little magic formula a lot of people don't realize that if you go in, if you owe a year out on your car loan, it's going to act against you technically when you're trying to qualify because it's going to be considered a loan.
Right.
What do they need to do to make that loan kind of disappear off of their not off their credit, but off of their qualifying?
Okay, that's a great question, Jean. It doesn't actually disappear, but one of the nice things is if somebody has 10 months or less left on their installment loan, so not a revolving, not any kind of credit card, but like an installment car loan, we don't have to count that debt against them. So that does help them qualify for a higher mortgage payment. But circling back to what you were saying as far as people's comfort level, the majority of the time we can approve them for a higher mortgage than what most people are comfortable with. So we always do, I always want to make sure that we work with their comfort level and kind of work backwards and let them know based on their comfort level what type of mortgage they could afford as far as a loan amount.
Well, on that, back to that car payment, just so you understand, if you have, let's say 12 or 13 payments left, you don't have to wait 4 months until it's under 10 months. You can pay 3 months up front and get it down to 10 months owed on it. You know what I'm saying? You can prepay, so technically you only have 10 more months on it.
Right. You could do that, and then it's just a matter of waiting, not having your lender or waiting for that to season in your credit report.
Right. So you can manipulate that to where it works with the correct rules and regulations.
Right.
So
this is where I just want to interject. This is where the pre-planning comes in.
Yes.
So when Carolyn says you're thinking about buying a home, don't wait until, okay, I'm now ready to buy a home. Let me call Carolyn. It's okay. I'm thinking about buying a home. Let me call Carolyn so I can be prepared when the time comes to buy the home.
Yes,
exactly. There are so many things that, especially when I'm working with the boomers and seniors and so forth, a lot of people haven't bought or sold a home in 30 years. So they're still working with old rules and regulations, and they think, oh, when I get ready to buy, I'll buy. But they don't realize things have changed ever since we had the financial debacle or whatever we're calling it, our economic downturn, whatever we're nicely talking about in the mid 2000s. Things have changed, so it's very important that lenders explain everything. In fact, there's something just happened a few months ago, a special closing, not a closing, but an attempt to tell people exactly what they're closing on. I forgot what the
closing disclosure.
That's the one, and you have to do that just a few days before closing to make sure people understand and they don't wait at closing to find out what their payments are and so forth. And it used to be sometimes the day of closing you were getting your financial disclosures back. Now it's 48 hours?
It's 3 days.
3 days.
Yep, and it is a great rule because that way, like you said, seller or buyers have a little time to look at it. It's not, nothing can get changed, or it's not a shock right at the closing table when they have a moving truck.
Which brings up another thing. Carolyn Wolf, you're local right here. And of course, you can handle loans, all over Florida?
All over Florida. And we deal with all kinds of people from all over
all over
world,
the area.
Actually.
But the nice thing is you actually have a live person that is dealing with just your loan. I have this, I don't know, it's a affliction, I think, about some of these things on the internet. I'm talking to consumers now, please don't get excited about using some of the internet providers and some of the internet mortgages or real estate agents or whoever, because you're not always talking to the same person. And you might be talking to somebody out in Idaho that's arranging a Florida mortgage for you. And sometimes, I remember closings, we were waiting on a Friday night at 5 o'clock and we couldn't get a hold of someone and we needed a certain piece of paper. That's not going to happen as often now because we have that disclosure 3 days ahead of time. But still, there's sometimes something that is right up to the last minute we're waiting for. And if you're right there and make a phone call that you can get that paper over to them physically if they're in the Space Coast area or even anywhere in Florida, we got faxes, we've got all kinds of things, that you don't have to worry about every time you call the 800 number to some of these mortgage institutions that you're going to get a different person looking at your files. Please find that local mortgage company or that real live person that can explain things on the phone that you can actually visit, that actually has an office. So that's my my commercial for the day.
I wanted to interject in there if I can, Jean. One of the things, too, as far as the internet applications, when people are putting in their income and things like that, if they're just plugging in a number, there's a lot more to it where we can personally ask the questions and break down that income, such as part-time income, tip income, commission, bonus. That can change the whole dynamic of the loan, where when you're doing it online with an internet system, they're not going to ask you those questions and break it down.
Exactly. And we're going to be talking more and more on the future shows about different things that you need to know about mortgages. So you want to always favorite our show, upload it and keep it handy. And you can always go to talknetworkradio.com and see our shows that will be online. And you've been hearing Carolyn Wolf from Certified Mortgage Planners explain some of the things that you need to know about obtaining a new mortgage. Also, Jonathan Lack, my co-host, he's the broker of Waterview Realty. He's also a real estate attorney with Lack & Lack Chartered in Indianapolis, and also owns Waterview Title Company. There isn't a question out there I don't think we've got the experts here. If there's a question out there that you need answered, please let us know. You can email us. You can also visit our website at yourhometownsolutions.com. And you can send information to me. Just do the contact button and send any kind of questions. It will make sure we address them on future shows. But we've had an exciting show. So one real quick tip on should I purchase if I know I'm leaving soon? We didn't get a chance to really answer that in depth. But Carolyn, John, what would you say to someone if they know they're going to be transferred, say, within 2 years? What would be your advice on whether they should rent or whether they should buy?
Go ahead, John.
Okay. Well, again, every client you need to have a consultation with so that you know what their wants and needs are. Right. In the example you give, if you're coming to town and you're only going to be here a couple of years and you know you're leaving, then renting is probably the better option because of closing costs and fees and such. Buying a home you talked about earlier, one of the things you didn't mention, but it's kind of the most obvious, maybe that's why you didn't mention it, is when you buy a home, you're building equity. When you pay rent, you're paying rent. You get use of the premises while you're living there, and then it's gone. Mm-hmm. When you buy a home, at least a portion of your monthly payment goes to principal, and it reduces your debt and it increases your equity so that you can ultimately sell the home. But if it's only going to be over a 2-year period, it's going to be a little bit tight. So
that's what I would advise too. Or if you do decide to purchase, you want to have that advice of that. We're going to use the word seasoned again, seasoned real estate agent who can find that kind of community that they know they can sell that home and
sell it or rent
it
again,
right away for
an opportunity for renting, as we talked about before.
That is definitely okay as far as a mortgage.
Exactly. And there's so many things that we will be discussing in future shows. So right now, I'll mark your calendars for Mondays at 1 o'clock. And you've been listening to Jean Newell with Your Hometown Solutions. And we thank you for joining us today with Carolyn Wolf with Certified Mortgage Brokers and Jonathan Lack with Waterview Title, Waterview Realty, and Lack & Lack Chartered.